So Michael Bloomberg hilariously decided to jump into the Democratic primary. He, of course, was the mayor of New York City. Now, interestingly enough, he used to be a Republican. And then he switched to an independent, and now he's running as a Democrat. Now, an interesting point I saw on Twitter is all the people who like to scream at Bernie Sanders by saying, he's not a Democrat, they will be shockingly silent on the fact that a person who was a Republican 7.5 minutes ago is now jumping in the Democratic primary and running with us. So it's funny how they only invoke that criticism when it's against somebody on the left, namely Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders, of course, was never a Republican. He was an independent, but he would caucus with the Democrats, and he was a strong left independent. Michael Bloomberg has many right-wing policy ideas, as you're about to see in a second. So this is part of this new trend where billionaires are stepping out from behind the curtain. I think they feel like their power is being questioned and their power is being threatened, namely by an insurgent left-wing movement in this country that wants to make the United States a thriving social democracy. So they're getting directly involved in politics, and you have Tom Steyer, of course, running for president and embarrassing himself. I think he's at less than 1%. He's a billionaire. You have Howard Schultz. He was going to run for president, and he basically was running for president, but he thoroughly embarrassed himself and probably really shocked himself. He probably thought he was going to take off. And then come to find out, of course, he also polled at about 1%. And, a couple months ago, very silently was like, what happened was I had a health scare, and then this happened, and then the sun was in my eyes, and it was too strong. So anyway, it turns out I can't run for president. So you have multiple billionaires, getting in on the fun this time around. And they are going to get a rude awakening, and I'm extremely here for it. So why this guy thinks he has any chance is beyond me. Actually, no, it's not beyond me. I know that he has advisors, he has strategists that he hired, and those strategists are telling him nonstop, like, oh, bro, you got this. Why? Because their livelihood is dependent on a guy like Michael Bloomberg hiring them and paying them, overpaying them, if we're being serious. And so, of course, they're going to tell him, like, oh, yeah, bro, you got a great shot, and people are going to love you, and this is going to go really well. So, and it's also just disgusting that you can buy legitimacy in the political system. You can buy legitimacy. As long as you have enough money, and you can, if you wanted to, which I don't think he's going to do it, but if you wanted to, you could self-finance your campaign completely. That's enough for mainstream media to be like, ooh, Michael Bloomberg, ooh, he's getting involved. It really is a shame that it works in such a ridiculous way. And make no mistake about it, guys, all of these billionaires think, without a doubt, the reason I am a billionaire is because we do live in a meritocracy and I'm a very stable genius. It's not just Trump who thinks he's a very stable genius. It's all these billionaires who got wealthy in this system, and in their heart of hearts, they most certainly believe we live in a meritocracy. And that they're just these super geniuses that we should all respect and appreciate, which is why he thinks like, oh, we're all going to run to the voting booth to make sure he gets in office. So enough about, the dynamic angle of this conversation. Let's talk about policy. So he was most recently in the news for saying that Bernie Sanders is, quote, offering free healthcare and a pony to people. Running in a Democratic primary in the year 2019, maligning and mocking the idea of Medicare for all and saying it's free healthcare and a pony. It's old unicorns and fairy dust nonsense, silly left-wing ideas. This guy really thinks he has a chance. He thinks he has a chance in a Democratic primary. Also, look how many people are repping the ideology that he thinks is a sure winner. There were so many. I mean, Tim Ryan is a good example. He's gone already. Howard Schultz, like we just talked about before, he's gone already. Amy Klobuchar, who's polling very low at the moment. Kamala, who had a brief moment in the sun and then plummeted. These are all people who roughly agree with his ideology, and they're not doing too well. Now, you could say Biden is doing okay at this point, but you know how I think that's going to unfold in the long run. And also, he's kind of coasting off his name recognition and being Obama's VP. So it's funny that I will go in and save the day, even though there's a bunch of people who already believe what I believe. Except maybe I'm a little bit worse. Which is true, by the way. So, he also said, legalizing weed is, quote, the stupidest thing anybody has ever done. Democratic primary 2019. This is what this guy says. He's against increasing the minimum wage, a policy that, by the way, 80% of the country agrees with. 80% want to raise the minimum wage, and he's against that. He's with the 20%, and he thinks he has a shot. He, of course, is famously for stop and frisk, and he argued that, if anything, stop and frisk is racist against white people. It disproportionately targets minority communities, and I think I forget the exact number, but it's over 98% of the time they find nothing. So you take away the Fourth Amendment rights of, the minority community in the city, no Fourth Amendment rights anymore, no protection from unreasonable search and seizure, and you don't even get anything. And when you do get something, what is it? Like a small amount of marijuana or whatever that they make a big deal out of, and they throw the book at the person. This guy's loathsome. He, of course, famously banned big gulps because, he wants to try to do something about obesity. Now, I get the sentiment of wanting to try to do something about obesity, but keep it real. That's an authoritarian move. And you could also legally buy, 2 of the smaller drink. So it's not even close to airtight, and it is just an authoritarian move that he wants to micromanage in your private life on social issues. There's a reason why I call myself a libertarian leftist. The libertarian part is on social issues where I want the government to kind of take a hands-off approach on social issues. No, he's not like that. He wants the government to get directly involved on social issues and micromanage your life. Hence the big gulp ban. And this is probably one of the things he's most famously known for. So that's who Michael Bloomberg is. These are his policy positions. They aren't going to sell well. They're not popular positions. So it's funny that people are acting like, oh my God, he's got a great shot. The things that they point to that they think might help him are, for example, he wants to fight climate change, even though he's against a Green New Deal, and guns. He's in favor of regulating guns. Now, if that policy position could really, give somebody a serious bump in the polls, a little guy by the name of Bet on My Stork would still be doing well. And he's not. He dropped out. So these are not going to carry him across the finish line. And by the way, it's hilarious to see pundits who just know absolutely nothing, commenting on Michael Bloomberg's run here, because they really show how little they know. And it's embarrassing and it's sad and it's amazing too, by the way. And we'll get to that story in a second. But the best part of this is, this actually is going to help Bernie. And it's going to help Bernie particularly because he will poll support, albeit a tiny amount. He's not going to do great in the polls, but he will pull support from Biden, from Mayor Pete, even from Warren, believe it or not. Because a lot of the former Hillary supporters went to Elizabeth Warren, even though there's a pretty big ideological difference between the two. And some of them will, even if it's a tiny amount, go to Bloomberg. So he's going to pull from everybody except Bernie Sanders. Everybody in the top tier except Bernie Sanders. So really, we should be thanking Michael Bloomberg. Because his ego is going to have the opposite effect of what he thinks it will have. He thinks it's going to, I'll take down the insurgent left flank, and I will get the nomination. When in reality, he'll get like 3%, if that, and, end up helping Bernie Sanders. So, wonderful. Split that centrist vote even more. I love to see it. We should all be thanking Michael Bloomberg, even though it is quite a sight to behold that this Hobbit man thinks he's God's gift to this planet and he can become the next president.